Hello, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Pecora back to read our final chapter in our novel, Prince Puggly of Spud and the Kingdom of Spiff. So, boys and girls, sit back, relax, and enjoy Chapter 13, Our Man of the Mud. When Puggly awoke, he saw flashes of light. They jabbed at his eyelids, painfully bright. He heard music as well, the lilting of lutes, the grumble of tubas, the whistling of flutes, and perhaps, just perhaps, the bray of bassoons. Then he opened his eyes to see only balloons. "I think this is it," he whispered, and then he came very close to fainting again. But he didn't. Although he was right on the verge, he bravely was able to fight off the urge. He shook off his stupor. He was no longer dazed. He instead was astounded. The prince was amazed. He slumped on his throne like a half-empty sack, an uncomfortable slouch in the curve of his back. Every spud in the kingdom was with him as well, and as he straightened himself, Prince Puggly could tell he was smack in the middle of a special event. There was singing and dancing. He knew what that meant. A party, he thought. Amazing at last. By the look of things, everyone's having a blast. There he was in the midst of a Spudlian ball. For a moment, he just sat there, just watching it all. There was Francesca. She danced with her dad. The outfit has changed, and now he was clad in Spudlian clothes, in trousers that drooped, as if in the back he had recently pooped. Meanwhile, the shaman was also on hand. He was up on the stage with the Spudlian band. He wore big platform heels and a flowery suit and was rocking it out on an electrical lute. Up above was a banner affixed to a wall. It said in huge letters, stupendously tall, "Welcome back, Pugsley, our man of the mud. And to Franny's pop too, hey, welcome to Spud. Now get up and dance, it's a party, you bet. It's a double reunion, a feast and a fete." Prince Puggly was pleased. He admired the crowd. He gazed at their outfits, so garish, so loud. He beamed as they danced in their fanciest shoes. A few of them were even blowing kazoos. To top it all off, a balloon had come loose, floating down like a feather plucked out of a goose. It tumbled, it wafted, it finally dropped down on the crest of his crown, where it popped. "He's awake!" someone shouted. "It's true," someone said. "He's coming around. He's back from the dead." Then nobody spoke. Instead, they all froze. The people stopped dancing and tapping their toes. The shaman stopped strumming in the midst of a riff. There was no sound at all, not a cough, not a sniff. Faced with the silence as still as a grave, Prince Puggly stood up. He gave them a wave. "Hooray!" cried the Spuds. They shouted, they roared. They showed off how deeply their prince was adored. At last, when the cheers were beginning to wane, the shaman stepped up with a glass of champagne. "Hey, P-Man," he said, "if you're in the mood, would ya give us a speech? Like, say something, dude." A speech, Puggly thought. I'll give it a try, in spite of his throat going horribly dry. "We Spuds," he began, "we're not really revered. Other kingdoms around us think we're all a bit weird. To them, it would seem we're not stylish enough. They want us to dress up in trendier stuff. Well, to me you look great. There's nothing amiss. I'm proud to be prince of a kingdom like this. A kingdom where each of us looks like a kook, where our socks and our shoes are the color of puke, where our rifles and ruffles are lacking finesse, where our powdery wigs are a wonderful mess, where the backs of our breeches sag down in the butt. And if they don't like it, then we say, so what?" Prince Puggly was ready to say something more when a stranger appeared to darken the door. And when I said stranger, as I did so just then, I meant it. There was no slip of my pen. The stranger got right to the root of the word. He looked very strange. He looked rather absurd. For all he was wearing, like Puggly before, were wide-fronted underpants and nothing else more. Unlike Puggly, however, these undies were tight. They didn't have hearts. They were brilliantly white. In the silence that followed, it was Franny who spoke. She said to the stranger, "Are you stealing our joke? The whole undie thing? I think that you'll find we've tried that already. You're a little behind." "No!" cried the stranger. He was standing his ground. "I'm serious here. I'm not joking around. In the place where I'm from, the only clothing they sell is rotten and soggy and infested as well. You can take it from me. It's appalling to wear. There were beetles," he said, "nearly ruined my hair." His hair! Why, of course, that was the clue. It was then, all at once, every Spudlian knew who was standing before them at the palace's door. How was it, they wondered, they hadn't noticed before? King Walter, they cried. Can it actually be? It could. But he'd changed to a certain degree. How had he changed? It was slight, I suppose. I think it had something to do with his nose. In any case, yes, the Spuds had it right, but their previous king was a sorrowful sight. He was haggard and haunted, a little too thin, and some sort of rash was afflicting his skin. From his undies on up, he was blotchy and red. I'm allergic to organic fashion, he said. Yet his hair was untouched. Why, it looked rather nice. A big blonde bouffant, it was plump and precise. As the Spudlians gazed at that champion cough, they remembered their reason their king had run off. Wait a second, they shouted. Perhaps you recall, not long ago, you abandoned us all. You woke up one morning and poof, you were gone. You left us, remember, to run a salon. It's true, Walter nodded. I had to, you see. Being king of the Spuds, that wasn't for me. I'm quite good with scissors, as I'm sure you can tell. So that had a certain advantage as well. But look what their clothing has done to my skin. Please, come on, guys, would you let me back in? In response, the whole crowd had one thing to say. We no longer need kings, so please go away. Wait, Walter cried. I don't want to be king. I told you already. That isn't my thing. Just lend me some ointment and vitamin pills. I'll open a barber shop up in the hills. No way, said the Spuds. You are not what we like. You and your hairdo can go take a hike. That's right, you heard us. Now leave us alone. Besides, we've got someone new on the throne. Prince Puggly stood up, as if rising on cue. As he did, the whole crowd separated in two. The prince began looking down the length of the aisle. When his eyes met Francesca's, he gave her a smile. Then he said to his people, Is that really fair? Do we really choose kings on account of their hair? It just isn't right. After all, if we do, we're all just as bad as Miss Ruby LaRue. Besides, he went on, that guy's covered in hives. So everyone stop! For once in our lives, we're dropping the focus on collars and sleeves, on fabrics and patterns and stitches and weaves. Every kingdom's gone mad, and even our own. Our fixation on fashion is overly blown. When it comes to our clothes, we ought to be free and wear what we want unconditionally. Whether wild or refined, whether subtle or brash, we can wear it as long as you don't get a rash. What's really so wrong with spiffy and style? Perhaps we could try it just once in a while. And they could try ours. Is that really so strange? I'm sure we have fashion advice to exchange. It ought to be fun. That's what fashion is for. But that's all it is. Just fun, nothing more. It shouldn't, it mustn't cause everyone strife. Come on, guys, let's face it. There's a lot more to life. These words from the throne had dramatic effect. The Spuds could all see that their prince was correct. They said sorry to Walter. The man was consoled as they welcomed him back to the Spudlian fold. To Puggly, the shaman said, Dude, wicked speech. Congrats, little P-man, on healing the breach. He reached up for the banner hanging over his head. Crossing out the word double, he wrote triple instead. Oh, thank you, said Walter, the Hitheroo king. This rash I've contracted, it really does sting. So the Spuds gathered round him with cottony swabs and smeared him with ointment in generous gobs. Feels great, Walter cooed. Let me tell you, it's bliss. I just hope you've got a whole barrel of this. You see, he went on, beginning to swoon, I think you might need a lot more of it soon. It was Franny who first understood what he meant. Outside, she told Puggly, and to the windows they went. In an instant they saw that the princess was right. There were all sorts of people coming out of the night. They staggered like zombies, stumbling over the ground. People from every last kingdom around. From the Kingdom of Spiff, the Kingdom of Sleek, the Kingdom of Hip, and the Kingdom of Chic. From the Kingdom of Swish, of Mod, and of Fad, as Walter predicted, they all looked pretty bad. Their skin was all red, their clothes were all gone. Every one of them only had underwear on. We're sorry, they called. We made fun of you guys. We can sort of see now that wasn't so wise. We know we all acted like a whole bunch of schmoes, but please, could we maybe just borrow some clothes? Groovy, said the shaman. Bring 'em in, bring 'em all. Let 'em in and let's party, we'll have a ball. 'Cause no matter what happens, I know this is true. We're gonna party right now like it's 1602. Meanwhile, in an alcove at the back of the room, hidden from sight in the shadows and gloom, one foggy old person had witnessed it all, the jumble and joy of a Spudlian ball. This person just smiled, she nodded, and then, for the very last time, she picked up her pen. So they all lived in Spud, and there they remain, where Puggly the prince still continues to reign, where he usually dresses a bit like a nut, in polka dot breeches that sag in the butt, where a princess in PJs is free to proceed to follow her dreams, to read and to read, where the princess's dad became less of a prig and briefly considered a Spudlian wig, where close to the palace, way up in the hills, a barber renowned for his scissoring skills can offer you any old style you would want, but his favorite, of course, is a massive bouffant. And where, if you visit, it is often said, there's a man with a daisy on top of his head. He wears bell-bottom breeches in a flowery suit, and he'll teach you some chords on an electrical lute. And so, my good readers, believe it or not, we have just about come to the end of the plot. All that remains is the usual stuff, the pithy conclusion, the summary fluff. But as for a moral, what can I say? Some tired old chestnut? Some common cliche? No, I don't think so. Those lessons and rules, in my humble opinion, are only for fools. Yet I realize it's something some readers may miss. And so, here we go. The moral is this. If you happen to follow some popular trend, be careful. It leads to an unhappy end. You may be accepted, you may knock 'em dead, but you'll also have festering fruit on your head. But wait, you insist, there's still something more. There's a pertinent matter you shouldn't ignore. Ah, yes, my good reader, I see what you mean. Your skills of perception are certainly keen. You're correct. There is something I've so far concealed. There's one bit remaining I haven't revealed. It's about Puggly's invite that came in the mail, near the start of this rather meandering tale. The question itself is a question of who. Who sent it, you wonder? I'll give you a clue. It was someone quite old, but known to be wise. Someone with clouds in both of her eyes. Those eyes are right here. They're inside of my head, and the last of my memoir is just what you read. So with a wink from this foggy old eye, I bid you farewell. I bid you goodbye. The end. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed Prince Puggly of Spud and the Kingdom of Spiff. I know I certainly enjoyed reading it. I hope you have a wonderful day, boys and girls. Bye-bye.